The gunshot echoed across the dusty plains as Lillian Owens dropped to her knees, the last of her strength finally giving out. 3 days without food, 2 without water, and the merciless New Mexico sun beating down had nearly finished what the bandits had started. They'd taken everything: her father's wagon, their supplies, even the wedding band that had belonged to her mother. It was 1878, and the promise of a new life in Santa Fe had turned to dust just like the trail beneath her cracked boots. "Ain't no one gonna die on my land today," a deep voice called from somewhere above her. Through the haze of exhaustion, Lillian glimpsed worn leather boots approaching before her world went dark. When Lillian awoke, the rough texture of a cabin ceiling greeted her. She tried to sit up, but her body protested with a wave of dizziness. "I wouldn't move too quick if I were you," the same voice from earlier advised. A man moved into her field of vision, tall with broad shoulders, sun-weathered skin, and eyes the color of the sky before a storm. He placed a tin cup of water at her lips. Small sips. "Who are you?" she managed after drinking. "Cole Oakley. This is my ranch you collapsed on." He studied her face. "You've been through hell, Miss Lillian Owens." She tried again to sit up, this time succeeding. The aroma of something cooking made her stomach clench painfully. "They took everything," she whispered, the reality of her situation crashing back. "The Harding gang. They left me with nothing but the clothes on my back." Tears threatened, but pride held them at bay. "They left me starving." Cole's expression hardened momentarily before softening. "Then eat first, cry later," he said, reaching for a bowl of stew on the nearby table. "Can't solve problems on an empty stomach." The stew was simple venison, potatoes, and carrots, but to Lillian, it tasted better than any fine restaurant meal she'd had back in St. Louis. She ate slowly, savoring each bite as Cole watched silently. "Thank you," she said when finished. "I don't know how to repay your kindness." "No need." Cole took the empty bowl. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next." What came next was a revelation. Cole's ranch, the Double O, was modest but well-maintained. A small cattle operation with a vegetable garden, a few chickens, and a spring-fed creek. Cole lived alone save for his ranch hand Miguel Rodriguez and his wife Teresa, who kept house and cooked. "Miss Lillian needs clothes," Teresa declared the following morning, "and proper shoes." Her eyes were kind but assessing as she looked Lillian over. "I have nothing to pay you with," Lillian admitted, shame coloring her cheeks. Cole, leaning against the doorframe, spoke up. "You any good with numbers? I kept my father's books for years. He was a carpenter. Miguel and I are useless with ledgers. Teresa helps when she can, but with spring calving." He shrugged. "Work for your keep until you decide where you're heading." Fair relief washed over her. More than fair. The days that followed established a routine. Mornings, Lillian helped Teresa with household chores. Afternoons, she organized Cole's chaotic financial records. The ranch was solvent, but barely. Cole was better with cattle than cash flow. A week after her arrival, Lillian broached the subject that had been weighing on her mind. "The Harding gang," she said during supper. "They're known around these parts." Cole's jaw tightened. "Unfortunately, Jeb Harding and his boys have been terrorizing travelers between here and Santa Fe for 2 years now." "The Sheriff Davis tries," Miguel interjected, "but his jurisdiction only covers Cimarron. Once they hit the open territory." He shook his head. "They took my father's tools, his life's work." Lillian's voice trembled. "And my mother's wedding band." Cole's eyes met hers. "I'm sorry, Lillian, truly." That night, unable to sleep, Lillian stepped outside. The vast canopy of stars above offered no comfort. She hugged herself against the chill, startling when a blanket draped around her shoulders. "Thinking about them won't help you sleep," Cole said quietly. "I know." She turned to face him. My father died 3 months ago, consumption. His final wish was for me to take his tools to Santa Fe and start fresh. Now I have nothing of him left. Cole was silent for a moment. What would you do if you could face them? The Hardings. I'd want justice, she answered without hesitation. Not revenge, justice. He nodded, something like respect flickering in his eyes. Get some sleep, Lillian. Dawn comes early on a ranch. As spring blossomed into early summer, Lillian found herself settling into life at the Double O. Her father's dream of Santa Fe faded as new dreams took root. She expanded the garden, taught Teresa to read English from Cole's small collection of books, and transformed the ranch's finances with careful management. Cole, initially reserved, gradually revealed more of himself. He'd fought for the Union in the war, returned to find his parents dead from influenza, and built the ranch from nothing. He read voraciously, played chess with skill, and despite his rough exterior, showed unexpected gentleness with injured animals and children from neighboring farms. One evening, as they played chess on the porch, Lillian realized she was staring at his hands, strong, capable hands that could rope a steer or delicately move a chess piece. Your move, he prompted, a hint of amusement in his voice. Blushing, she focused on the board. You never married. The question escaped before she could stop it. If he was surprised, he didn't show it. Almost once, Sarah, daughter of a rancher over in Colorado, his voice remained even. She died of fever before the wedding. I'm sorry, he nodded acknowledgement. And you, no suitor back in St. Louis. Father was protective, and then he fell ill. She moved her bishop. Check. Cole studied the board with newfound interest. Well played. The moment was shattered by hoofbeats approaching fast. Miguel rode into the yard, his horse lathered. Harding gang, he called out, dismounting. They hit the Jenkins place. Took everything, burned the barn. Cole was on his feet immediately. Anyone hurt? Old man Jenkins took a beating for resisting. He'll live, but they left them with nothing. Lillian felt the blood drain from her face. Just like me. Cole's eyes met hers, and something unspoken passed between them. Miguel, ride to town. Alert Sheriff Davis. Tell him I said it's time we form a proper posse. 2 days later, Cole prepared to ride out with 7 other men, ranchers, shopkeepers, and the sheriff himself. They'd received word that the Harding gang was holed up in an abandoned mining camp in the foothills. I should come with you, Lillian insisted as Cole saddled his horse. Absolutely not. His voice was firm. These men are dangerous. I can identify them. You can stay alive, he cut her off. Then, more gently, I need to know you're safe here. Something in his tone made her pause. You'll be careful, always am. He checked his pistol, then surprised her by reaching out to touch her cheek briefly. I'll bring back what's yours if I can. After they rode out, the ranch seemed unnaturally quiet. Lillian tried to distract herself with chores, but worry gnawed at her. Teresa noticed her distraction. Cole is smart, the older woman assured her, and very good with that rifle. How do you bear it? Lillian asked. The waiting, the not knowing if Miguel will come home. Teresa's eyes softened with understanding. You love him already, no? The question hit Lillian like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. I couldn't possibly, she finally said. I've only known him a few months. The heart knows what it knows. Teresa patted her hand. And Cole, he looks at you the way Miguel still looks at me after 20 years. Before Lillian could respond, the sound of riders approaching sent them both to the window. Relief flooded her at the sight of Cole, Miguel, and the others returning. But as they drew closer, she noticed Cole's grim expression and the way he cradled his left arm. She rushed outside as they dismounted. You're hurt. Just a graze, Cole dismissed, though blood had soaked through his shirt sleeve. Sheriff Davis approached, his hat in his hands. Miss Owens, We recovered some items we believe might be yours." He gestured to a pack tied to his saddle. "Would you mind identifying them?" With trembling hands, Lillian opened the pack. Inside lay her father's tools, his prized plane, chisels, and measuring implements, and wrapped in a handkerchief, her mother's simple gold band. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Yes, these were my father's. And this," she held up the ring, "was my mother's." "The Hardings?" she asked, looking up at the men's faces. "Jeb and 2 of his boys are dead," Sheriff Davis said solemnly. "They chose to fight rather than surrender. The other 2 are in custody, headed for trial in Santa Fe." Lillian nodded, emotions too complex to name washing through her. "Thank you, all of you." Later, after Teresa had cleaned and bandaged Cole's wound, Lillian found him sitting alone on the porch steps, staring out at the darkening sky. "You should be resting," she admonished gently. "Too restless." He made room for her to sit beside him. "Did you find everything that was taken from you?" "Yes, everything that mattered." She hesitated. "Cole, when I saw you riding back wounded, I realized something." He turned to look at her, his expression guarded. "I realized that getting my father's tools back wouldn't have meant anything if you hadn't come back too." She took a deep breath. "I came west looking for a new beginning. I think I've found it here with you, if you want me to stay." For a long moment, Cole was silent, and Lillian feared she'd misread everything. Then he reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I've wanted you to stay since that first night when you walked out here looking at the stars," he admitted. "But I had nothing to offer you then. You had everything to offer: food when I was starving, shelter when I was lost, purpose when I had none." She squeezed his hand. "You gave me a chance to start again." "Lillian," he said her name like a prayer, "I'm not a wealthy man." "The double O is modest compared to what you might have had in Santa Fe." "I don't want wealth," she interrupted. "I want a home. I want—" Her courage nearly failed her, but she pressed on. "I want you." In answer, Cole leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, then deepened with a hunger that matched the longing that had been building in Lillian for weeks. When they finally parted, both breathless, his forehead rested against hers. "I love you," he said simply. "Have for a while now." "And I love you," she replied, the words feeling right, natural. "Though Teresa knew before I did," he laughed softly. "Miguel's been giving me knowing looks for weeks." In the weeks that followed, the double O transformed. With the security of knowing her future lay there, Lillian threw herself into improvements with newfound energy. She planted flowers around the cabin, expanded the vegetable garden, and organized a proper office for the ranch's business. Cole, too, seemed energized. He built additional shelving for her father's tools, cleared land for more grazing, and began construction on an addition to the cabin. "For when we need more room," he said with a meaningful look that made Lillian blush. They were married in early September, a simple ceremony performed by the circuit preacher with neighbors and friends in attendance. Lillian wore a new dress of pale blue calico, her mother's ring on her finger and wildflowers in her hair. "You are so beautiful," Cole whispered as they danced under lantern light that evening, the fiddle player striking up a waltz. "And you," she replied, "are the finest man I've ever known, Cole Oakley." Their wedding night was a revelation of tenderness and passion that left Lillian breathless with wonder. As they lay tangled in sheets afterward, Cole traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "I never thought I'd have this," he admitted. "After Sarah died, I figured I'd live out my days alone on this ranch. And I never thought I'd find love in the wilderness after being abandoned to die." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "Life has strange ways of giving us exactly what we need, doesn't it?" "It does indeed." He pulled her close. "Rest now, Mrs. Oakley. Tomorrow begins our first full day as husband and wife. Life settled into a new rhythm. Days filled with work and evenings with conversation, reading aloud, or simply sitting together watching the sunset. Cole taught Lillian to ride properly and shoot accurately. A rancher's wife should be able to defend herself, he insisted. In turn, she taught him the finer points of bookkeeping and introduced refined touches to their home. Winter came early that year, bringing heavy snow that isolated the ranch for weeks at a time. They spent Christmas with just Miguel and Teresa, exchanging simple gifts and feasting on a wild turkey Cole had shot. Lillian presented him with a new leather-bound journal, while he gave her a silver locket containing a small braid of his hair. "So I'm always close to your heart," he explained as he fastened it around her neck. "You already are," she assured him, kissing him soundly. By spring, the ranch was flourishing. Cole's careful breeding program was producing stronger calves, and Lillian's management had created a healthy reserve of cash. They were discussing the possibility of purchasing adjoining land when Lillian realized she'd missed her monthly courses twice. The doctor in Cimarron confirmed what she'd begun to suspect. "Congratulations, Mrs. Oakley. You should expect your blessed event around October." Cole's reaction to the news was everything she could have hoped for. His face lit with joy, then sobered with responsibility. "I'll build a proper cradle," he declared, already mentally designing it. "And we'll need to finish that addition to the house." "We have time," she laughed, delighted by his enthusiasm. "But yes, it seems our family is growing sooner than we planned." That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Cole's hand rested protectively over her still flat stomach. "I never imagined I could be this happy," he confessed. "When I found you out there, half dead from hunger and exposure, all I wanted was to help you survive." "I never expected you'd end up saving me too." "Saving you?" she questioned. "How did I save you? From loneliness? From a life half lived?" He kissed her temple. "From becoming a bitter old rancher with nothing but cattle for company." She leaned into him, content. "Then we saved each other." Summer brought challenges. A drought threatened the grazing land, forcing Cole and Miguel to drive the cattle to higher pastures for weeks at a time. Lillian's pregnancy progressed, her body changing as their child grew within her. When Cole returned from the high country, he was startled by the pronounced swell of her belly. "You've grown," he marveled, placing his hand reverently on her abdomen. "So has your son or daughter," she replied. "Doctor says everything is progressing perfectly." Their peaceful existence was interrupted in late August when Sheriff Davis arrived with troubling news. The two surviving members of the Harding gang had escaped during transport to the territorial prison. They'd been spotted heading in the direction of Cimarron. "I thought you should know," Davis told them gravely. "They made threats against those who testified against them, including you, Mrs. Oakley." Cole's expression darkened. "They won't get within a mile of this ranch." After the sheriff left, Cole called Miguel in from the fields. "We need to prepare, double the watch, check all weapons." He turned to Lillian, his face grim. "I want you and Teresa to stay inside as much as possible." "Cole," she began, but he cut her off. "I won't risk you or our child," he said firmly. "These men have nothing left to lose." For 2 weeks, they lived in a state of heightened vigilance. Cole and Miguel took turns standing watch, and Lillian kept her father's shotgun loaded and within reach even as she went about her daily tasks. The strain began to take its toll on all of them, especially Cole, who slept little and worried constantly. Then, just as they were beginning to hope the danger had passed, disaster struck. Lillian was alone in the garden, harvesting late tomatoes while Teresa washed laundry at the creek. Cole and Miguel had ridden out at dawn to check the herd. The sound of approaching horses made her look up, expecting to see her husband returning early. Instead, two unfamiliar riders appeared at the edge of the property. Something in their posture predatory, watchful sent alarm racing through her. Keeping her movements casual, Lillian backed toward the house where the shotgun waited just inside the door. She had almost reached it when one of the men called out, "Mrs. Oakley, isn't it? The carpenter's daughter." She froze, her blood running cold. "Who's asking?" "Old friends of your husband," the man replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm Frank Harding. This here's my cousin Ed. My brother Jeb sends his regards from the grave." Lillian's hand closed around the doorframe. Just a few more steps to the shotgun. "My husband isn't here." "We know. Saw him and the Mexican heading north." Frank dismounted, his spurs jingling ominously. "Thought we'd pay a social call while he's occupied." In that moment, Lillian made a decision. She wouldn't be a victim again. Wouldn't let these men destroy the life she and Cole had built. "I have coffee on the stove," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "You're welcome to a cup before you move on." Frank's eyebrows rose in surprise, then he laughed. "Well, ain't you hospitable?" He nodded to Ed, who also dismounted. "We'd be obliged for that coffee, madam." Lillian led them to the porch, positioning herself so they had to pass through the doorway first. As Frank stepped over the threshold, she grabbed the shotgun, leveled it at his chest, and cocked both hammers with a decisive click. "That's far enough," she stated, her voice suddenly steel. "My husband taught me to shoot, and I won't miss at this distance." Frank froze, his hand instinctively moving toward his pistol. "I wouldn't," Lillian warned. "Your brother made the mistake of underestimating people who appear vulnerable. Don't follow his example." A tense silence stretched between them. Behind Frank, Ed shifted nervously. "Frank, maybe we should shut up," Frank snapped, his eyes never leaving Lillian's. "You don't have the nerve to pull that trigger, lady." "You left me to die of starvation in the desert," she reminded him, her fingers steady on the trigger. "You took everything I had, and now you threaten my home, my husband, and my unborn child." Her eyes narrowed. "Try me." Something in her expression must have convinced him, because Frank slowly raised his hands. "Easy now, we just came to talk." "No, you came for revenge." She gestured with the shotgun. "Back up. Both of you, onto the yard." They complied, moving backward down the porch steps. Lillian followed, maintaining her distance, the weapon never wavering despite the weight in her arms. "On your horses," she ordered. "Ride out the same way you came in." "This ain't over," Frank snarled, his veneer of civility evaporating. "Your husband killed my brother." "Your brother chose his path," Lillian replied coldly. "As you're choosing yours right now. Ride away and you might live to see tomorrow." For a moment she thought Frank might defy her. His hand twitched toward his gun again, but a distant sound, hoofbeats approaching rapidly, made him reconsider. "Come on, Ed," he growled, swinging into his saddle. "We'll settle this another time." Lillian kept the shotgun trained on them as they rode away, only lowering it when they disappeared from sight. Her arms shook with delayed reaction, and she sank onto the porch steps, suddenly dizzy. That was how Cole found her minutes later, the shotgun across her knees and tears streaming down her face. He was off his horse before it fully stopped, rushing to her side. "Lillian, are you hurt? The baby, we're fine," she managed through her tears. "The Hardings were here. I made them leave." Cole looked at the shotgun, then back at her face, understanding dawning. "You faced them down. Alone." She nodded, unable to speak further as delayed shock overwhelmed her. Cole gathered her carefully in his arms, mindful of her swollen belly, and carried her inside. Later, after she had calmed and explained everything, Cole paced the cabin floor like a caged predator. "I should have been here," he said for the third time, self-recrimination heavy in his voice. "You couldn't have known," Lillian reasoned. "And I handled it." You shouldn't have had to. He stopped pacing to kneel before her chair, taking her hands in his. Lillian, if anything had happened to you. But it didn't. She squeezed his hands. Cole, when they first attacked me on the trail, I was helpless. Today I wasn't, because of you. Because you taught me to defend myself, to be strong. His expression softened slightly. You were always strong, from that first day when you said they'd left you starving. And you told me to eat first and cry later, she reminded him with a small smile. Practical advice that saved my life. Cole pulled her gently into his arms, mindful of her condition. We need to end this, once and for all. The next morning, Cole rode into Cimarron with Miguel to meet with Sheriff Davis. He returned with a plan. The sheriff would spread word that Cole had taken Lillian to Santa Fe for her confinement, leaving the ranch minimally guarded. In reality, several deputies would be positioned strategically around the property, waiting for the Hardings to take the bait. And where will I actually be? Lillian asked, already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. At the Jenkinses, Cole replied firmly. It's not negotiable, Lillian. You're 8 months along. I won't risk you or the baby being anywhere near when they return. She wanted to argue but knew he was right. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll come back to us. I promise. He sealed it with a kiss that held all the love and determination in his heart. The next week was the longest of Lillian's life. Staying with the Jenkins family, she helped with their children and household tasks to keep her mind occupied, but worry for Cole was a constant companion. Each day that passed without news stretched her nerves tighter. Then, on the 6th day, Cole arrived. One look at his face told her everything she needed to know. It's over, he confirmed as she flew into his arms. They came back last night just as we expected. Frank Harding won't threaten anyone ever again. And Ed, she asked against his chest, surrendered. He'll stand trial in Santa Fe. Cole drew back to look at her, his eyes drinking in the sight of her. You ready to go home, Mrs. Oakley? More than ready, she assured him. Their child, a daughter they named Sarah Teresa Oakley, was born 3 weeks later on a crisp October morning. Cole paced outside the bedroom as Teresa and the midwife attended Lillian, his face pale with worry until the first cry of his daughter reached his ears. She's perfect, Lillian told him when he was finally allowed in, cradling their swaddled infant. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and your eyes. Cole touched his daughter's tiny hand with wonder. She's beautiful, like her mother. His voice cracked with emotion. I never thought I could love anyone as much as I love you, but somehow my heart just expanded to include her too. That's what love does, Lillian said softly. It grows to encompass all it needs to. The years that followed brought prosperity to the Double O. Cole expanded their herd, built a larger house, and eventually brought on additional hands as the ranch grew. Lillian kept the books, managed the household, and raised Sarah, who was joined 2 years later by a brother, James Michael. Sometimes, on summer evenings when the children were asleep, Cole and Lillian would sit on their porch like they had in those early days. He would take her hand, now marked by years of work and motherhood, and kiss it reverently. You ever regret it? He asked once. Staying here instead of continuing to Santa Fe. Lillian looked out over the land that had become her home, then back at the man who had become her heart. Never, she answered truthfully. That day when I collapsed on your land starving, desperate, I thought it was the worst day of my life. I was wrong. It was the beginning of everything good. Cole smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling with happiness. Then eat first, cry later. He quoted his own words from long ago. Wise advice from a wise cowboy, she teased, leaning into his embrace as the sunset painted the western sky in hues of gold and crimson. The wisest thing I ever did was listen.